A barefoot, hungry girl walked into a billionaire's funeral, and the entire room went silent. She had no shoes, no invitation, no family name anyone recognized. But the dead woman left one unbreakable instruction: this girl, and only this girl, was allowed to read her final words out loud. By the third paragraph, 3 people were on their feet. By the last line, the woman in the front row was gripping her chair so hard her rings cut into the wood. Because what that girl read didn't just shock the room. It took everything they thought was theirs and handed it to a child who arrived with 43 naira and bare feet.
The girl has no shoes. She stands at the front of a room that cost more to decorate than most people earn in 10 years. 200 people in black silk and pressed linen stare at her from cushioned chairs arranged in perfect rows. Not one of them knows her name. The chandelier above her throws cold light over white roses stacked 6 feet high, a mahogany casket trimmed in gold, and marble floors so polished you can see your own face looking up at you from the ground. And standing in the center of all that money, all that arranged and deliberate grief, is a barefoot girl in a torn beige shirt, one shoulder seam split open, holding a sealed envelope in both hands like it contains the last honest thing left in the room. It does. Her name is Francine Ose. She is 13 years old. Her collarbone pushes against the fabric of her shirt. Her feet are bare on the cold marble. Her knuckles are white. Hi viewers. Right now, before this story takes one more step, drop a comment and answer this. If you were sitting in that room and this barefoot girl walked to that podium, what would your very first thought be? Be honest. Because what every single person in that room is about to think, and what the truth actually is, are 2 completely different things. The attorney standing to her right is Mr. Elijah Boateng, 24 years in estate law. His face is the face of a man doing something he has never done before and has verified 3 times as legally required. The instructions were in Helen's own handwriting. Witnessed. Notarized. Unbreakable. Francine opens the envelope. The paper unfolds like a match being struck in a silent room. She reads the first line to herself. Something shifts behind her eyes, fast, there and gone. She looks up at 200 faces already forming their verdict. She looks at the gold-trimmed coffin 3 feet away. She looks back at the page. She begins to read aloud. By the third paragraph, 3 people in the front row are standing. By the time she finishes, a woman near the back is crying so hard she cannot stay in the room. And Adiz Mensa, Helen's niece, sitting in the very front row in black silk and pearls, is gripping the chair in front of her so tightly her rings are cutting into the wood. She has been planning what to do with this inheritance for 3 years. She did not plan for this girl. But to understand why a sealed envelope in the hands of a barefoot child tears this family apart at the seams, you need to understand the woman in that coffin. What she built. What was taken from her. And the secret she carried for 30 years that no one in that polished, grief-dressed room had any idea was still breathing. On the morning Christian Helen Adeyemi turns 58, she stands alone at the window of her 14th floor office and watches Lagos move below her like a city that belongs to someone else. She has a driver named Cyrus who arrives at 6:45 every morning without being asked. She has a personal assistant, a chef, and 400 employees across 6 offices. She has a real estate empire that stretches from Abuja to London and a net worth that newspapers run in bold. She has a birthday cake on her desk, placed there quietly by Cyrus before she arrived, with a card signed by the full office staff. She reads every name on that card. Then she stands at the window and the city moves and nobody calls and nobody comes. There was a time when Helen pulled warmth into every room she entered. Not because of money. Because of something that cannot be bought. Her husband David used to say she could walk into a funeral and make the whole room believe something good was still possible. He was not wrong. She had that quality like a second heartbeat, steady, automatic, always there. David died on a Tuesday in October. Ordinary Tuesday. Wet road. Wrong timing. 11 words delivered by a voice she did not recognize at 2:14 in the afternoon. 18 years of marriage collapsed into a single sentence. Helen stood at this same window and she looked at this same city and she made no sound at all. She did not cry for 3 years. Not at the funeral. Not the night she packed his things. Not the morning she found his reading glasses in the coat pocket she had missed, folded small, one lens scratched, right where he always kept them. She put them in a drawer and went back to work. After David, the warmth went out of her the way a lamp goes out in an empty room. She still ran the meetings. Still signed the contracts. Still flew to London when London required her. But she moved through her own life like a visitor. Present in every room. Belonging in none. Her family felt it. They made the quiet, practical decision that people with expectations tend to make. They came less. Called less. Her niece Zara, who had spent 11 straight Christmases at Helen's table, married and forgot the address. Her nephew Kemi, who had borrowed money 3 separate times and never once been asked to repay it, became suddenly very busy. One by one, the people who had warmed themselves at her fire drifted toward easier warmth. Helen did not chase a single one of them. That was not the woman she was. She had grown up in a 2-room house in Abeokuta where the roof and the rain argued every season and the rain usually won. Her mother, a woman named Patience, sold fried akra from a wooden roadside table. Her father did construction work until his back refused. Helen watched both of them grind themselves down to nothing, and she made a promise before she was old enough to understand what keeping it would cost. She would never be powerless again. She kept that promise. And it cost her everything it kept her from losing. But here is what not one person in that funeral room knows. The grief Helen lived with was not only David's. She had been carrying a second grief since she was 32 years old. A child. A girl. Born in a private clinic outside Lagos in the early hours of a Tuesday morning. Helen held her for 11 minutes before the nurses said there was a complication and carried the baby to another room. She waited 4 hours. Then a doctor she had never seen before came in and told her, in a low and practiced voice, that the child had not survived. She believed that for 27 years. Then 3 years ago, in the sleepless stretch between midnight and 4 a.m., she stopped believing it. A private investigator. A paper trail. A death certificate from 1992 with a clinic registration number that matched no patient admitted on that date. Ink signatures that did not match the same doctor's handwriting on other documents from the same period. And piece by piece, the shape of what had actually been done to her came clear. Her daughter had not died. She had been taken. Deliberately. By someone Helen had trusted with everything. The investigators spent 3 years on the trail. It was cold, broken, and had been covered over with great care. Then, 6 months before Helen died, he sent her a name. A photograph. An address. The address was 3 streets from her own gate. Francine Osei is awake before the city opens its eyes. By 5 she has folded the piece of flattened cardboard she sleeps on and tucked it behind the rear support pillar of the uncompleted building 3 streets from Helen's gate. The corrugated metal overhead groans when the wind comes through. She has slept here 4 months. Before this she lived with a woman named Auntie Cecile, who collected children the way some people collect strays, not from duty but from a heart too open to close. One afternoon Francine came back from the market to find the house empty and locked. Auntie Cecile had moved. No note. No forwarding address. Francine does not blame her. She learned early that people do what their circumstances require. Blame is weight she cannot afford to carry. She owns 3 things. A cracked plastic container, once used for shoe polish, holding 43 naira in coins. A photograph worn soft at the edges, of a woman she was told was her birth mother, the face blurred past recognition. And a small black notebook in which she writes, every single morning without exception, one good thing she noticed the day before. Not great. Not lucky. Just good. A woman sharing her umbrella with a stranger. A stray dog sleeping in a patch of warm sun. The smell of suya drifting from a cart 2 blocks over at dusk. She has done this since she was 9. The notebook has been replaced 4 times. Francine is the kind of girl a person walks past without looking. She is quiet the way children who have survived hard things tend to be quiet. Not broken. Not sealed off. Just careful. She watches before she speaks. She listens before she decides. She has a way of settling into a room that makes the room feel still, the way deep water looks calm even when everything below is moving. She notices Helen's house the way she notices most things on this street. From a distance. Without expectation. The polished black gate. The guard who rotates at 7. The black car arriving at 6:45 every single morning without fail. She files it the way you file weather. Not hers. Just there. Then she starts to notice something else. The car idles in the driveway for 15, sometimes 20 minutes before it moves. Engine running. No one getting in or out. As if the woman inside needs to gather herself before she can manage another day. As if leaving the house is something she has to build the courage for each morning from scratch. One morning in the gray half-light before the street fully wakes, Francine sees Helen standing at the gate herself. Dark robe. Both hands on the bars. Looking out at the empty road the way a person looks when they have been searching so long that the searching has become the only shape their days know how to take. Francine feels something move in her chest. A pull with no name on it. A recognition with no memory behind it. She does not understand it. She holds it the way you hold a sound you cannot place. Quiet. So. She knows nothing about the investigation, the forged documents, the 30-year lie, or the name and address delivered to Helen 6 months ago. She knows only that this woman and her stillness feel like something she has been moving toward without knowing she was in motion. 3 weeks before Helen dies, Francine walks to the gate and knocks. The guard sends her away. She comes back. Sent away again. She comes back a third time on a Tuesday evening in heavy rain, soaked through, barefoot on wet concrete, 43 naira in her pocket, and this time the guard calls the house. Helen comes to the gate herself. She looks at the girl standing in the rain without an umbrella or shoes, and something crosses her face too fast for Francine to fully catch it. Something that looks like a woman finally seeing what she has been looking for. She opens the gate without a word. Steps back. Holds it. Francine walks in. What happens in that house over the next 3 weeks? What Helen shows her, tells her, places in a sealed envelope with ironclad instructions. None of that is known to the 200 people sitting in that funeral room right now. But Francine knows. She has known since the night Helen laid the photograph on the kitchen table between them and let her look at it for as long as she needed. She has known since Helen said her name. Not to introduce herself. Not in greeting. In recognition. The way you release a word you have held in your throat for 30 years. She lifts the page. She takes one breath. She starts to read. And in the third row, Adiz Mensa slides her hand into her purse and wraps her fingers around her phone. She already feels it. That something has gone wrong. She does not know yet how wrong. And she does not know that everything she is about to do to fix it will be captured. The envelope tears open and the room stops breathing. Francine smooths the pages flat against the podium. Her hands are steady now. Completely steady. The trembling from 2 minutes ago is gone, replaced by something that looks, from any seat in that room, like a girl who has known exactly what this moment costs and has been paying toward it longer than anyone here can imagine. She clears her throat once. She begins. The opening is standard legal language. Time, place, mental capacity. The room settles into a reluctant patience. Adiz uncrosses and recrosses her legs. Her brother Kemi, 2 seats to her left, checks his watch without trying to hide it. Their mother Naomi Mensa sits with her hands folded, her expression arranged into the careful stillness of a woman who has rehearsed this moment many times and is now simply waiting for it to land where she planned. It does not land where she planned. The first section covers charitable gifts. A hospital wing in Abeokuta. A scholarship fund for girls in Ibadan. A street children's housing initiative across 3 states. The numbers shift the air in the room, but Naomi does not move. Charitable bequests are expected from a woman like Helen. They are the opening, not the answer. The second section covers personal items. Jewelry to household staff who served her more than a decade. David's watch to a colleague who stayed in contact. Her private library to a foundation. A painting to Dr. Lenora Ashby. Nothing to family yet. Kemi shifts. Naomi's hands tighten by 1 degree. Adiz puts down her phone. Francine reaches the third section. She pauses. 1 full second. 2. The kind of pause that has something behind it. She reads. The remainder of my estate, including all properties held in my name across Nigeria and the United Kingdom, all active business interests and operating companies, all investment accounts and liquid assets, all private holdings and any assets acquired or accrued from the date of this document to the date of my death, I leave in their entirety to Francine Osei Adeyemi. One beat of silence. My daughter. 2 words. And the room comes apart. Naomi is on her feet before her chair has finished scraping the marble. Kemi rises half a second behind her, his face doing what a face does when the mind receives something the body does not know how to hold. 3 relatives on the other side of the room stand at once. A woman near the back wall makes a sound that is not a word. The low, restless murmur that had been running under this entire service breaks open into something louder and much less controlled. Adiz does not stand. She sits completely still in her black silk, one hand flat on her knee, and she watches Francine at the podium with the focused expression of a person running very fast calculations that she cannot afford to show on her face. She is not panicking. Adiz Mensa does not panic. She is identifying edges. Mapping what she knows against what just happened. Already moving 2 steps ahead. Mr. Elijah Boateng raises both hands. His voice cuts through the noise with the practiced authority of a man who has spent 24 years making rooms like this one. Listen. Order. This is a legal proceeding. You will conduct yourselves accordingly or you will be removed. The noise drops. It does not stop. But it drops enough. Naomi points across the room at Francine. Her voice is controlled. The controlling costs her something visible. That child is not Helen's daughter. Helen never had a daughter. Every person here knows it. This document was prepared by a sick woman being manipulated by a stranger, and I will not stand in this room and pretend otherwise. Mr. Boateng looks at his file. Not at Naomi. Mrs. Mensa. The will is valid. The terms are legally binding. If you wish to contest it, the appropriate channels exist. This room is not one of them. Please sit down. Naomi does not sit. She turns to the attorney beside her, a man named Dakarai Owusu, and she speaks to him in a voice low enough that the room cannot catch every word, but loud enough that the intention behind those words is completely clear. She is not finished. She has not begun to be finished. Francine has not moved from the podium. She stands in her torn shirt and her bare feet and she watches the room break apart, and her face holds something that is hard to name from a distance. Not fear. Not satisfaction. The expression of a person who knew something painful was coming, is watching it arrive exactly as expected, and is still not fully ready for how heavy it is. She folds the pages. She steps back. She picks up the torn backpack from the corner where she left it. Nobody in this room is paying attention to the backpack. They should be. Adiz Mensa moves before the room has finished reacting. She is in the corridor with her phone to her ear inside 2 minutes, speaking in the low-clipped sentences of someone who does not make requests, only issues instructions. She calls Dakarai Owusu. She calls the second attorney she keeps on separate retainer for situations that require a harder approach. She calls Kemi and tells him to say nothing to anyone until she comes back. She returns in under 4 minutes. She smooths the front of her dress. She sits. Her face gives away nothing. But she walks directly past Francine on the way back to her seat and she stops. She looks at her. Not the cruelty that uses a raised voice or a pointed finger. Something colder. More considered. You are a very brave child, she says. Her voice is warm and level and every word arrives like something with a hard center wrapped in soft material. To come into this house. To stand at that podium. To read those words in front of all these people who knew and loved Helen for decades before you ever knocked on that gate. She tilts her head. What was it 4 weeks ago? What? That you first met her? Francine looks at her and says nothing. My aunt was ill. She was on multiple medications. She was grieving and she was isolated, and when a girl appeared at her gate and gave her a little attention, she responded the way people who are very alone tend to respond. She attached. She made decisions no one in a clear state of mind would make. She leans down, bringing her face level with Francine's. I do not know who coached you or prepared you or wrote those pages. But I will find out. And when I do, Every person involved will face consequences they are not ready for. She straightens, smooths her dress. You should go home, she says. Then she walks back to her seat as if she said nothing at all. Francine watches her go. She does not look frightened. She does not look angry. She looks like a girl who has just had something she already suspected confirmed out loud, and who is now deciding very precisely what to do with it. She reaches into the backpack. She takes out a second envelope, smaller, sealed, Mr. Boateng's name written on the front in Helen's handwriting. She carries it to the attorney without a word and holds it out. He looks at the envelope. He looks at Francine. He opens it. He reads it once, then reads it again slower. He looks up at the room. At Naomi near the far wall with Dockerai beside her. At Adiz back in her chair. At the family members still deciding which side of history to land on. He folds the note and slides it into his breast pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a secondary document to be presented per Mrs. Adeyemi's instructions. This will take place in a separate meeting immediately following this service. The named parties will be informed privately. Everyone else is free to leave. Chairs scrape. Voices rise. Kemi starts toward Mr. Boateng and is stopped by a second member of the legal team. Adiz does not move. She sits in her black silk and watches Mr. Boateng with the still, focused attention of a woman who has learned that what she cannot hear, she must observe with everything she has. She watches him glance at Francine. She watches Francine give the smallest nod. Something shifts behind Adiz's eyes. Not panic. The first thread of real uncertainty in a woman who has not felt uncertain in a very long time. She did not know about a secondary document. In 11 years of managing this family's legal affairs, she had never once heard it mentioned. Which means Helen prepared it after she stopped trusting Adiz with the details. Which means Helen knew exactly what Adiz was planning. Which means the woman in that coffin was several moves ahead, even from her deathbed. The side room holds 8 chairs, a long table, and a window looking out over the garden where Helen took her morning coffee before the illness made mornings difficult. Mr. Boateng sits at the head of the table. Francine sits to his left. Across from them, Dr. Lenora Ashby, Helen's physician for 19 years, and a man named Quentin Becky, a private investigator who sets a leather briefcase on the table and does not open it yet. Adiz demanded entry. Mr. Boateng told her twice in the corridor that she is not named in this document and cannot attend. She is outside the closed door right now. Her voice comes through the wood, steady and precise, telling someone by phone that she is being excluded from a legal proceeding concerning her family's estate. Mr. Boateng closes the door. He slides a photograph across the table to Francine. Not the hospital photograph Helen showed her in the kitchen. A different one. Taken 6 months ago, the morning Quentin Becky located Francine sleeping beneath the corrugated metal overhang 3 streets from the gate and sent the image to Helen. Francine is asleep on cardboard in the photograph. She does not know the picture is being taken. Her face is turned toward the camera and the sleep has relaxed something in it, and the angle catches the line of her jaw and the particular set of her brow in a way that makes Dr. Lenora Ashby press one hand over her mouth and look away from the table for a moment. Because the jaw is Helen's jaw. The brow is Helen's brow. Lenora had sat across from that face for 19 years. She was looking at it now on a girl who had been sleeping under rust and rain 3 streets away. Quentin Becky opens the briefcase. He lays out documents in a line. The forged death certificate from 1992. Clinic records showing no infant death registered on the relevant date. A financial transfer made 9 days after Francine was born from an account belonging to Miriam Adeyemi, Helen's then mother-in-law, to a private placement agency that dissolved by 1996. Money. Paid to make a newborn disappear. Francine holds the 1992 certificate for a long time. She has seen some of this before in Helen's kitchen, on the evenings Helen was well enough to sit at the table and show her. But laid out like this, in order, with 2 witnesses who can verify every page, it is different. It is real in a way that kitchen conversations, however honest, could not fully make it. She sets the certificate down. Dr. Ashby slides the DNA results across to Mr. Boateng. Independent laboratory. Authorized by Helen 6 months before her death using a biological sample collected from Francine during one of her visits to the house, with Francine's full knowledge and consent. The match, 99.97%. Mr. Boateng sets the page face up on the table and looks at Francine. She looks back at him. Outside the door, Adiz Mensah's voice has gone completely silent. Mr. Boateng stands and opens the door. Adiz is 14 inches from the frame. He looks at her. She looks at him. A full second passes. Then he says quietly, "You are going to want to call your attorney. Not Dakari. The other one." He closes the door. Whatever Adiz Mensah does in the next 24 hours, with every contact and every resource and every favor she has accumulated over 4 decades of knowing how power works, she will be doing it knowing that the room she just listened through contains a DNA result, a money trail going back 30 years, and a girl whose jaw is her mother's jaw. She cannot unknow it. And soon neither can the world. The courtroom smells like paper, cold air, and contested money. Judge Adana Okafor enters at 9:02 and the room rises. She is 53, compact, with reading glasses on a beaded chain and the expression of a woman who stopped being surprised by human nature somewhere in her 8th year on the bench. She opens the file. She does not look up right away. Adiz Mensah sits between 2 senior partners from one of Lagos's most expensive litigation firms. Dark navy today, not black. Posture exact. And still. A pen she is not writing with. 3 months of preparation show in every detail. Francine sits beside Mr. Boateng and Dr. Lenora Ashby, who has agreed to testify. Plain white blouse. Dark trousers. Someone found her shoes that fit. The backpack is on the floor beside her chair. She does not look at it. Everything inside it has already been submitted. Adiz's lead attorney is a man named Clarence Nwosu. Very good at his job. He builds his case with the smooth efficiency of someone who has won in rooms like this before. Helen was on 3 medications, 2 carrying documented warnings about impaired judgment. The relationship with Francine was manufactured over weeks. The DNA testing protocol was irregular. The chain of custody for the biological sample was unverified. A 99.97% match means nothing if the collection cannot be confirmed. He is measured and thorough. Exactly the kind of attorney that money assembles. Judge Okafor listens. Her face does not move. Mr. Boateng stands. He does not try to match Clarence Nwosu's polish. He places documents on the table one by one like stones being set into a foundation. The forged 1992 certificate. The clinic records. The transfer from Miriam Adeyemi's account 9 days after Francine was born. The dissolved agency's registration records. Reconstructed over 18 months from archived government files by Quentin Becky. A voluntary statement from the retired doctor who signed the false certificate, given once the paper trail confirmed the truth without needing him. Then Dr. Lenora Ashby takes the stand. 19 years with Helen. Her credibility comes not just from her credentials but from the fact that she is clearly a woman who does not belong in courtrooms and is here only because she believes she must be. She describes the DNA collection in full technical detail. The chain of custody. And then she describes the morning Helen called her and said, in a voice Lenora had never once heard from her across 19 years, that she believed she had found her daughter. Lenora stops speaking for a moment. She looks at Francine. Then she finishes her testimony. Judge Okafor removes her glasses. She looks at the documents. She looks at Francine. She looks at Adiz, who is looking straight ahead at nothing. She puts her glasses back on. I have reviewed all submitted materials, she says. I will render my decision now. The room holds its breath. Clarence Nwosu sets his pen down. Adiz does not move a single muscle. And Francine, for the first time since the hearing began, closes her eyes. Judge Okafor speaks for 11 minutes. She addresses the DNA evidence first. The laboratory methodology confirmed. The chain of custody challenge dismissed as unsubstantiated. The medication argument addressed next. Helen signed the will 14 weeks before her health declined to the level Adiz's team described. 3 physicians assessed her mental capacity at the time of signing. Not 1. 3. The conspiracy documents covered last. The judge does not use careful language here. She calls the 1992 certificate a deliberate fraud. She names the financial transfer for what the records show it to be. The primary individual responsible is deceased and cannot be charged, but her findings are entered formally and permanently into the record. The will is valid. The estate transfers to Francine Osei Adeyemi in full. Any further challenges will be considered against the evidence already presented and are expected to arrive with considerably more substance than what was offered this morning. She stands. The room stands. She leaves. Silence for 1 full second. Then Clarence Nwosu speaks quietly into Adi's ear. She listens. She nods once. She picks up her bag and walks out without looking at Francine, without looking at Mr. Boateng, without looking at anyone. Kemi follows a few steps behind, his head down. Their mother Naomi sits 1 moment longer than everyone else. She looks across the emptying room at Francine. Not the look she wore at the funeral. That one was arranged, calculated, designed to project certainty. This look is different. This is the look of a woman seeing something she spent a very long time choosing not to see, and finding that now, in this quiet, she cannot look away from it. She stands. She leaves. No words. Mr. Boateng closes his files and takes Francine's hand in both of his and holds it for a moment before letting go. Dr. Lenora Ashby touches Francine once on the shoulder and tells her Helen would have been proud. She says it simply, the way you say things that are entirely true and require no decoration. Francine thanks her. She picks up the backpack and walks out into mid-morning Lagos. The city is loud and warm and does not wait for readiness. She stands on the courthouse steps and the world moves around her, buses and voices and the smell of food from a cart down the block, and she stands completely still inside all of it. She takes out the small black notebook. She opens to that morning's page. She writes 1 word. Justice. She puts the notebook away and walks toward the life that someone spent 30 years making sure she would have. 8 months after the verdict, Francine Osei Adeyemi opens a building. It is not a grand building. A converted warehouse on the edge of Lagos, painted white, with a clean courtyard and a garden along the south wall where someone has planted marigolds in long rows because marigolds are bright and they come back every year without being asked. 60 children sit in that courtyard on plastic chairs when Francine walks through the gate, and every one of them turns to look at her at the same moment, and the sound they make is not applause. It is the sound of children who have been waiting for something and are relieved that the waiting is finally over. She has named it the Helen and Francine Center. Not the Helen Adeyemi Foundation. Not something that places her name as an afterthought. Both names. Equal. Side by side. Because that is what they are and what they were. A mother and a daughter who found each other through the only door left open, now building something together in the only way that still makes sense. The center runs 3 programs. Daily meals and housing support for street children in the surrounding area. School fee coverage through secondary level for children in the Lagos foster system. A legal aid fund for cases involving forged documents, falsified records, and identity fraud committed against people with no resources to fight it. Francine sits in the courtyard with the 60 children for 3 hours that first afternoon. She does not make a speech. She does not stand at a podium. She sits in a plastic chair in the middle of the group and eats lunch with them, rice and stew from the same pot, the same bowls, no table different from any other. A girl named Zola, 9 years old, 2 weeks at the center, sits beside her and announces very seriously that the marigolds were her idea. Francine tells her they were exactly the right idea. Zola considers this and goes back to her rice. Francine looks at the white walls and the long rows of orange and yellow, and she thinks about a woman in a dark robe standing at a gate in the early morning, looking out at an empty street. She thinks about a kitchen table covered in documents and a voice saying her name, not in introduction, not in greeting, but in recognition. The way you say a word you have been holding in your throat for 30 years and are finally allowed to release. She thinks about 11 minutes. The 11 minutes Helen held her before they took her away. She has thought about those 11 minutes many times since the verdict. She has decided that 11 minutes of being held by someone who loved you completely, even if it is all you ever had, is not a small thing. She has decided it is, in fact, everything. She does not cry. She stays very still for a long moment in the warmth and the noise of the courtyard, and she lets herself feel the full weight of what was taken from her and the full weight of what was given back. Then Zola taps her arm and asks if there is more stew. Francine laughs. Genuinely and fully, the way you laugh when life surprises you with something small and real in the middle of something that has been very large and very long. She gets up to find more stew. This is what the will said at the very end. After the legal language. After the properties and accounts and assets. After everything that could be measured and transferred and signed over. It said, I am leaving you everything I have because you are the only person who ever came to my gate without wanting something from me. You came because something in you recognized something in me. And maybe that is all a family ever truly is. Two people who recognize each other across a distance and decide to stop walking away. I'm sorry I could not find you sooner. I'm sorry for the years. I'm sorry for the cold floors and the 43 naira and every morning you woke up not knowing where you came from. You came from me. Build something that makes the forgotten feel found. That is all I ask. Francine read those words at that podium in front of 200 people and she did not rush through a single line. She read them slowly. She gave every word the space it deserved. Because Helen had waited 30 years to say them. The least Francine could do was make sure every person in that room heard them clearly. The richest people in this world are not the ones with the most money. They are the ones who keep looking for the people they love until they find them. And the ones who, when they are found, make sure no one else gets left behind. If this story moved something in you, share it right now with someone who needs it today. Subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story on this channel that reminds you what truly matters. Drop a comment and tell us the moment that hit you the hardest. Your words reach further than you know. Your story belongs here too. And we will see you in the very next one.